Let's face the truth. Stupidity is much more than just low intelligence. It is a complex system of behavioral patterns that trap a person in their own limitations, making them weak and unable to see their mistakes. The saddest part of this situation is that a truly stupid person does not even realize their position. They're like a hamster on a wheel, constantly stepping on the same rakes, refusing to learn from their mistakes, and shifting the blame onto the world around them. This phenomenon has become so deeply rooted in human nature that it often goes unnoticed even by a careful observer. In modern society, this phenomenon takes on particularly acute forms. We live in an era of unprecedented access to information and opportunities for development. But paradoxically, this often leads to the opposite effect. People become hostages to the illusion of knowledge, where superficial acquaintance with a topic creates a false sense of expertise. This trend is exacerbated by social networks and information bubbles, where everyone can find confirmation for their most absurd ideas. Take, for example, a typical situation in the modern world. A person who constantly complains about low wages but refuses to take qualification courses. Or an entrepreneur who repeatedly fails in business but stubbornly refuses to analyze their mistakes, believing that the market is unfair and competitors are dishonest. These examples illustrate a classic case of self-sabotage, where a person becomes the main obstacle to their own development. Moreover, such people often become a source of toxic influence on others, spreading their destructive beliefs. As a well-known psychologist aptly remarked, "Until we realize what is hidden in our subconscious, it will control our lives, and we will call it fate." This profound thought reveals the essence of the problem. Unawareness of one's behavioral patterns turns a person into a victim of circumstances that they themselves create. In psychology, this is called learned helplessness, a condition where a person becomes so accustomed to their role as a victim that they fail to see opportunities for change. This is particularly evident in the professional sphere. Imagine an office worker who has held the same position for 10 years, actively resisting any changes and innovations, and then sincerely wonders why younger colleagues are surpassing them on the career ladder. Or a specialist who refuses to learn new technologies, believing that their old skills are sufficient, and then finds themselves unwanted in the job market. This situation is exacerbated by the fact that the modern world requires constant learning and adaptation, and the inability to do so becomes a professional sentence. In today's information society, this is especially noticeable. A person can watch a couple of videos online and already consider themselves an expert in any field, whether it be economics, medicine, or quantum physics. They are willing to argue with professionals with decades of experience, relying only on superficial knowledge and social networks. Such behavior not only demonstrates stupidity, but can also be dangerous, especially when it comes to important life decisions. In the era of post-truth and information noise, the ability to think critically and acknowledge the limits of one's competence becomes a vital skill. In the financial sphere, the consequences of such thinking are particularly destructive. People take out loans without understanding the terms, invest in dubious projects, succumb to beautiful promises, and refuse to learn from their mistakes. They prefer to blame the system instead of improving their financial literacy and making responsible decisions. This is especially evident in the era of cryptocurrencies and financial pyramids, where the desire for quick enrichment overshadows common sense. Stupidity is particularly evident in the inability to control emotions. These people are driven by feelings, not reason. They react impulsively instead of reflecting on the situation. Their decisions are often dictated by momentary impulses, which they later regret. In conflict situations, they either lash out in anger, fall into despair, or simply run away from the problem instead of solving it with a clear head. This emotional instability often leads to professional failures and ruined relationships. In interpersonal relationships, this problem takes on a special acuteness. The inability to learn from mistakes leads to repeating destructive patterns in relationships. A person may change partners, cities, jobs, but the problems follow them because the source lies in their own behavior and thinking. This creates a vicious circle of failures and disappointments, from which it is difficult to break free without deep self-awareness and self-improvement. In a social context, such behavior creates a snowball effect. One person who refuses to acknowledge their mistakes and learn from them can negatively influence an entire team or family. Their stubbornness and resistance to development become a toxic example for others, especially for the younger generation, who may adopt these destructive behavior patterns. It is important to understand that emotional immaturity and lack of self-control are not just personal shortcomings. They are signs of a deeper problem, a reluctance or inability to develop and learn from one's own experience. In the modern world, where emotional intelligence is valued as much as professional skills, such behavior becomes a serious obstacle to personal and career growth. Developing emotional intelligence and the ability to reflect become key factors for success in any area of life. But most importantly, stupidity is a choice. It is not an innate or unchanging state. It is a series of decisions that a person makes every day. If you do not learn to recognize these destructive behavior patterns, there is a risk that you will repeat them again and again without even realizing it. Every moment of awareness, every decision to take responsibility for your life is a step towards changing these patterns. It is important to remember that change begins with acknowledging the problem and being willing to work on yourself. In the modern world, where the pace of change is constantly increasing, the ability to learn and adapt becomes a key factor for survival. Those who refuse to learn and grow risk being left behind in life, regardless of their starting point or natural abilities. Success is increasingly determined not by what a person knows now, but by how quickly they can learn and change. Consider a vivid example of an emotionally immature person, an explosive individual who gets angry at the slightest inconvenience. Whether it's a traffic jam, a delayed response to a message, or disagreement with their opinion, any trivial matter can trigger an outburst of anger. Such a person mistakenly believes that their explosive nature demonstrates strength, but in reality, is a clear sign of weakness. This behavior not only destroys their own life, but also creates a toxic atmosphere for those around them, forcing them to constantly walk on eggshells. In the modern world, it is particularly noticeable how many people struggle with controlling their emotional reactions. For them, every small problem seems like the end of the world. Instead of seeking solutions, they immerse themselves in a sea of disappointment and self-pity. They are impulsive individuals who act without thinking. They recklessly spend money, quit their jobs in fits of anger, say things they later regret. Their emotions control them rather than the other way around. In the era of social media, such behavior becomes even more noticeable and destructive, as every impulsive action can be recorded and have long-term consequences. As Carl Jung warned about the power of the unconscious, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. For people lacking emotional control, their unconscious reactions truly determine their fate. They do not think, they do not strategize, they simply react. And when things go wrong, they blame everyone but themselves. This creates a vicious cycle of self-deception and self-destruction, which becomes increasingly difficult to break with each new impulsive decision. Such people often confuse aggression with strength. They believe that shouting the loudest means being right. But the reality is different. A person who cannot control themselves is weak. One who cannot manage their emotions will always be under the control of others. They are easily manipulated because anyone who knows their buttons can control them. Furthermore, such a person becomes a hostage to circumstances. Their mood is entirely dependent on external factors beyond their control. This emotional instability can be particularly dangerous in a professional environment, as it can undermine years of career growth in a few moments of impulsive behavior. In contrast, a wise person remains calm under pressure. They understand that emotions are temporary and do not allow them to dictate their behavior. As the proverb goes, the fool vents all his feelings, but the wise man holds them back. True strength, lies in emotional control. This is especially important in the modern world, where stress and uncertainty are constant companions in our lives, and the ability to maintain clarity of thought in complex situations becomes a critically important skill. Furthermore, a person's environment speaks volumes about them. It is a mirror reflecting their future. Look at who a person spends time with, and you will see where they are heading. A foolish person makes the mistake of surrounding themselves with the following types of people: negative thinkers who constantly complain and see only problems, lazy individuals who waste time on frivolous entertainment instead of creating a meaningful life, yes men who never challenge their bad decisions and only say what they want to hear. Such an environment creates an illusion of comfort, but actually becomes a trap, hindering personal growth and development. And finally, a foolish person becomes a slave to their impulses. They choose comfort over challenge, entertainment over growth. They indulge in short-term pleasures, ignoring the long-term consequences. Instead of creating something meaningful, they waste time chasing cheap dopamine spikes, mindless entertainment, unhealthy food, endless scrolling on social media, alcohol, drugs, or casual relationships that leave them empty. In the modern world of temptations, this becomes an especially dangerous trap that can silently consume years of life. In today's society, which offers quick fixes for everything, it is especially easy to become such a person. Bored? Endlessly scroll through social media. Sad? Drown the pain in alcohol. Lonely? Swipe right and meet strangers. Lack motivation? Play video games and pretend to be successful instead of actually working on yourself. Every day, weak people choose these quick pleasures over discipline. And what happens? Their dreams remain just dreams, their bodies weaken, their minds grow lazy, and years pass by, leaving them wondering why they never became the person they wanted to be. It is a slow but relentless degradation that only becomes apparent when too much time has been lost. A smart person acts differently. They actively seek out those who challenge them, push them to grow, and make them feel uncomfortable in a good way. They surround themselves with mentors, people who have already achieved what they aspire to, friends who are not afraid to point out their mistakes, winners who are determined, disciplined, and ambitious. Such an environment creates a space for constant growth and development, where every obstacle is viewed as an opportunity for learning. A foolish person asks, "What will bring me pleasure right now?" A wise person asks, "What will make my future better?" Foolish people spend time on temporary pleasures. Smart people invest time in their development. And this is the key difference that determines their fate. In a world where technologies and society are constantly evolving, the ability to make an informed choice in favor of long-term development becomes a critically important skill for achieving true success and life satisfaction. T is particularly noticeable in the modern world, the division between those who choose the path of development and those who succumb to laziness and irresponsibility. The lazy fool spends days watching TV shows, while the wise person develops their skills, trains their body, and strengthens their mind. The weak person spends money on parties and unnecessary things, while the wise person saves, invests, and builds their financial future. The undisciplined person jumps from one superficial relationship to another, while the wise person builds deep, meaningful connections and chooses a partner who contributes to their growth. This is why only disciplined people achieve success. As the proverb goes, the fool consumes all that he has, but the wise person multiplies their wealth. The greatest people in history, warriors, leaders, philosophers, all lived by the principles of discipline. They rose early, trained their minds, controlled their desires, and focused on their mission. Pleasure is a trap. The fool chases after it. The wise person controls it. If you cannot master yourself, the world will master you. The most deadly form of stupidity is the inability to learn from your mistakes. Repeating the same mistakes over and over again. A person who refuses to learn from their failures becomes a prisoner of their own ignorance. No matter how many chances life gives them, they keep falling into the same traps, whether it's in relationships, business, or personal growth. Take a moment to think. Do you know someone who keeps dating toxic people and wonders why they always suffer? Who makes the same wrong financial decisions and constantly struggles with money? Who falls into the same self-destructive cycles of procrastination, laziness, addiction, never changing their approach? Carl Jung called this the unconscious repetition, the tendency to repeat harmful behavior from our past because it feels familiar, even if it brings suffering. A foolish person never stops to ask, "Why do I keep ending up here?" Instead, they play the victim, believing that life is unfair or that others are blamed. But here is the truth. Life is a teacher, but only if you are willing to learn. Without awareness of one's behavioral patterns, a person becomes a victim of their own ignorance. How many times does life have to teach you the same lesson? Are you blaming others instead of taking responsibility for yourself? Are you surrounding yourself with people who make you better or those who keep you stagnant? Kill your ego and stay humble. A foolish person thinks they know everything. A wise person knows they're always learning. Start questioning yourself. What beliefs of mine could be wrong? What can I learn from the people around me? Am I open to feedback, or do I become defensive? Master emotional control. Learn to listen instead of react. Stop letting trivial matters provoke you. Surround yourself with smarter people. If you're the smartest person in your circle is too small. Seek mentors. Get rid of negative influences. Learn from those who are ahead of you in life. Learn from every mistake. This is the most important rule. You will make mistakes. It is inevitable. The question is, will you learn from them, reflect, adapt, and grow, or will you repeat the same cycles? Intelligence is a choice. Ultimately, stupidity is not permanent unless you choose it to be. You have the power to change, but only if you are willing to put in the hard work. Face yourself. Stay humble. Learn from your mistakes. Surround yourself with the right people. Most people will never do this. They will remain stuck in their patterns, blaming others, avoiding responsibility, and wondering why life never changes. But you are different. You are here because you want to grow. You want to rise above average. You want to become a person who learns, adapts, and achieves success.